Hello everybody, my name is Ash and I'm going to bring you a Fallout 3 tier list, and today we're going to be talking about the perks. Now, over 3.5 years ago, I did a tier list for the Fallout New Vegas perks, and that video was pretty popular. In fact, it's one of my highest viewed videos and had a lot of comments on it. So anybody who watched that, I do appreciate the time you took to watch me ramble on an unedited video for 2 hours. And for those who haven't watched it, well, I should say, go ahead and check that out as well. The reason it took me so long to go and cover the perks for Fallout 3 is it's a really simple reason. I don't like the perk system in Fallout 3 at all, and I'll get into it a bit more as we go through this list of perks. But recently I started playing Tale of Two Wastelands, which is a mod for Fallout New Vegas, which ports Fallout 3 into New Vegas. And playing Fallout 3 with the New Vegas perk system, it's definitely a massive improvement. The thing I love about the New Vegas perk system is that in New Vegas, it kind of feels more like you can have a focused build. Like if I want to be explosives, there's perks dedicated to that. If I want to be energy weapons, there's perks dedicated to that. Unarmed and melee, dedicated perks. Whereas a lot of the perks in Fallout 3 are just improved skill or a little bit of damage here and there, and that's about it. By the end of most of my Fallout 3 playthroughs, I'll be 100 in all skills. I have no build. It's literally pick whatever ammo I want to burn through and leave and walk around the wasteland and fast travel back when I'm low on that ammo. There isn't much difference between playing Fallout 3 and, hey, I'm going to use the Deathclaw Gauntlet today, and tomorrow I'm going to use the Tenderizer, and then the day after I'm going to be using Lincoln's Repeater, and then the day after I'll be using Blackhawk. You're just pressing the mouse button and there isn't much difference in the gameplay, whereas New Vegas, you have stuff like perks where you can throw faster, swing faster, ragdoll enemies, walk faster. It's more crafting, ammo recycling. There's a lot of you can do in New Vegas, so that's kind of why I was reluctant to do Fallout 3, because I didn't want it to just be a video of me bashing perks for an hour and a half or however long this video might be, and we're like a few minutes in and that's pretty much all I've been doing. But I think now's the time, because I'm doing Tale of Two Wastelands and I'm playing Fallout 3. I feel like now is a good time to talk about Fallout 3. And don't get me wrong, I do love Fallout 3. I think Fallout 3 is a brilliant game, and if you can set up Tale of Two Wastelands, I think that's probably the best way to experience Fallout 3, because I do really like the Capital Wasteland and some of the locations in that game. But without further ado, I guess I'll get on with the tier list. Right after this shameless plug for myself, I stream on Twitch and YouTube on Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays. So if you want to see me suffer, raging, dying, bitching and moaning, or you just want to chat, troll me, whatever, feel free to swing on by on my live streams. And if you want to be notified of all your live streams, subscribe with the bell or join the Discord server in the description below. I'm going to talk about these perks in the order of which we could obtain them. My grading for these perks are based on several things. The usefulness of each perk would be the most obvious one, but I'm also taking into consideration what level you can obtain these perks, the stat investment, and whether or not it will hold up in the end game. Another thing important to consider is bugs. Some perks don't work as intended, and because of that, these perks will be ranked low or high. I'm going to be talking about perks from the mindset of someone who plays the game without any mods, so console or vanilla PC. So any argument about perks being good if you install an unofficial patch is, I'm not interested. Shut up. Don't need mods to enjoy games. You gotta enjoy games as Todd intended. Alright? Right. Okay. Enough rambling, enough precursor. Oh yeah, this is all my opinion. I'm joking, it's actually a fact. I'm objectively right. So, feel free to argue in the comments, because I would like to hear people's opinions, because maybe I can give some of these perks a second chance. A lot of you commented on Radboy being low tier in the New Vegas tier list, and I gave it a go, and I still didn't like it, but I can understand the appeal of it. The intention of this video is to drum up discussion, not to drum up arguments, which is just, I guess arguments is just spicy discussion. Is that what the kids say? Spicy? Instead of whatever. Alright, enough of this bullshit. I'm going to start talking about perks. Level 2 perks. The first perk we're looking at is Black Widow. To take this perk, you need to be a female character, and what it lets you do is deal 10% more damage against males, and you come across 10 unique dialogue options throughout the game. Now this perk is pretty useful, since a lot of the enemies you fight are male, though keep in mind this does not include feral ghouls, super mutants, or swamp folk for some reason. Dealing 10% more damage to the majority of the enemies in the game is extremely valuable. However, I don't think it's completely necessary to take, and it does restrict roleplay to one gender. So if you're a female lone wanderer, always take this perk at level 2. If not, well, that's where we get to our next perk. I'm going to give this one a C. Lady Killer is the male equivalent to Black Widow. You have to be the male lone wanderer. You deal 10% more damage to females, and there's 8 dialogue options that you can come across. Now I'm going to rank this lower than Black Widow because 1, there's less females to kill, and 2, one of those dialogue options doesn't even work because they treat it like a failed speech check. So you can't, even though you use Lady Killer, the NPC will claim to be immune to it or something like that. So big D for the Lady Killer. Intense Training is our next perk. Increased special stat by 1 point, and it has 10 ranks. And I think this perk is probably one of the best perks you can take for your first couple of levels, because during character creation, there are some instances where you might have to go low on a certain stat so you can get high, intelligence or high charisma to make your build. So Intense Training can offset low numbers that you might have had to deal with in the character creation. This perk might be made redundant by the Almost Perfect perk at level 30, but honestly, looking at what you can take at level 2 and 3, there isn't much choice. So Intense Training is definitely probably the better option. I'm going to give it a B. The final level 2 perk I'm going to be talking about is Swift Learner. Gain 10% XP for all instances where you gain XP. Now this perk does get a bad rep. In fact, people love to just rank it very low, and I'm right there with you. I'm going to put it in F tier, but I'm going to defend it a little bit. I'm going to be playing devil's advocate. I think this perk might be useful for people who might just want to do a quick playthrough and don't want to, min-max or run around looking for skill books and whatnot, and maybe speedrunners. But outside of that, you got the well-rested bonus, and there's more than enough XP in the game for you to hit max level, even before you've done all the quests and DLC. So it's an F tier, but you know what, Swift Learner, you're not that bad. You're not that bad. You're just pointless, which I guess is bad enough. Onto the level 4 perks now. Child at Heart gives the player 21 unique dialogues with children. This is handy for the Little Lamplight quests and getting Sapling Used Charm in Oasis, which will increase your luck stat by 1. To be honest, this feels like a purely role-playing perk. However, being able to skip some of the more annoying quests in the game is really, really useful. And as I mentioned before, you can increase your luck by 1. And even though this perk requires 4 charisma, you can still use this perk to get by the speech checks in Little Lamplight without investing heavily into charisma or speech. But owing to how niche this perk is and how roleplay it is, I'm going to put it into C tier. Comprehension. Gain an extra skill point from books. And let me tell you, this is probably one of the best perks in the entire game. Even for a low intelligence, well, you need 4 to actually get this perk. I would recommend taking this perk on every single playthrough. The reason for this is that there's 324 skill books in the game, which means you can double those skill gains to 648. And if you're paying attention whilst exploring the Capital Wasteland, you're going to find a lot of these books. In fact, most locations in the game will have at least 1 skill book. And that's not even mentioning the fact that there's 2 skill books in the game that will constantly respawn because they're in the inventory of respawning enemies. If you're looking to get your character to have 100 in all skills, Comprehension is an absolute must. In fact, my last playthrough of Fallout 3, I actually managed to reach 100 in all skills before I even hit level 30. And I wasn't even using the Educated perk. This is an easy A tier. Speaking of Educated, that's our next perk. So with the Educated perk, you gain an extra 3 skill points on every level up. Now, this might upset a few people, but I'm going to put this in C tier, and I'm going to give this the honorary award of being the most overrated perk in the entire game. And the reason for that is you get more than enough skill points in the game that you don't really need those extra 3. I mean, comprehension, you're already getting 2 skill points per book. You know, that's more skill points in the entire game than what Educate can even give you. Is this worth taking ever? Well, I would suggest taking Educated for times when you're a low intelligence build. Like if you're hitting the bare minimum to get it, which is intelligence 4, or maybe even intelligence 5. But any higher than that, like a 6 or above, I don't think it's even worth it. In fact, if you've got 10 intelligence, you're probably not going to need it, because you're already getting 18 skill points per level. And unless you're looking to speedrun the game and pump up your stats as quickly as possible, or do some weird challenge run where you're trying to get all skills to 100 in the lowest possible level, I would give this perk a skip. Entomologist, 50% more damage against insects. And there's also a dialogue option in the quest Those. Now, this perk on the surface doesn't seem that impressive. However, I'm going to put this perk into the B tier. And the reason for this is this isn't a perk that's good for taking at level 4, because at level 4, all you're really going to be fighting is rad roaches, ants, and bloatflies, and the occasional rad scorpion. However, as you're leveling up, and when you're in the late 20s, mid to late 20s, you're going to start seeing albino rad scorpions in the Capital Wasteland. So when you hit the early to mid level 20s, this is probably one of the better perks to pick up, because a lot of the new perks introduced with Broken Steel are pretty underwhelming, and those albino rad scorpions have a lot of health and deal a lot of damage, so anything that can put them at a disadvantage will help you a lot in the end game. The final level 4 perk we're looking at is Iron Fist. Increases unarmed damage by 5. And it's not an unarmed skill increase, it's an unarmed damage increase. And let me tell you, this perk, even if you're not an unarmed build, I would highly recommend taking at least 1 or 2 ranks in it in the early game. Because in the early game, most of the guns you find are very weak and very low durability. And with Iron Fist, you're probably going to reach the highest early game damage you can with a pair of brass knuckles or even your bare hands, compared to a low durability 10mm or a 32 pistol or rifle. Now granted, being an unarmed build in the early stages of the game is pretty risky, but by the end game you're going to be maxed out with most of your stats, and hey, you might have a Deathclaw gauntlet that you crafted, and that Iron Fist that you took in the early game is going to show up again at the end game and make you hit even harder. So I'm going to put this into a B tier, and again, would recommend it on most playthroughs. Alright, moving on up to the level 6 perks. I'm going to start off with Bloody Mess, 5% more damage and a chance to splatter enemies. I'm going to give it a B, because it's extra damage on everything. It can make the quest, you got to shoot them in the head, a bit of a pain, but free damage is free damage, and by the time you hit level 6, your perk choices are pretty limited, so this is a very safe choice to take. And D is for Demolition Expert, and D is the tier of which this perk belongs to. And you might think, well, why? I mean, 20% extra explosive damage per rank for your grenades and explosives. Well, here's the thing. It requires 50 explosive skill to get this perk. And if I'm playing Fallout 3 and I want to go for an explosives build, what weapon do I want to focus on? What weapon will I be thinking about going for in Fallout 3? The Nuka Grenade. And guess what weapon this perk doesn't affect? The Nuka Grenade. So the best explosive weapon in the game doesn't get affected by the explosive perk. And for that reason alone, I'm putting it into D tier. Sure, you can take maybe 1 rank of it, so you can use like regular grenades in the early game until you work your way up to the Nuka Grenade. But the fact that one of the best weapons in the game doesn't get boosted by the perk for the same category, it's just ridiculous. Thumbs down. Horrible. Oh, and it doesn't work with missile launchers or fat men either, because they're classed as big guns. Demolition Expert doesn't affect missile launchers and fat men until New Vegas. F is for friends who do stuff together. F is for Fortune Finder. F is for paying respects, and F is the tier of which I put this perk in. Look at that. I used the same joke as I did with Demolition Expert, but I added to it so it makes it better. Right? Right. Fortune Finder. Find more battle caps. completely unnecessary. You can just sell ammo that you don't use. And there's plenty of ammo lying around in the wasteland. Darts are everywhere. Railway spikes are everywhere. 32 rifle. Like, there's nothing. There's nothing in the... You don't need it. And you'll get to the point where you'll have more loot than you can actually sell. I don't know. The economy in Fallout 3 doesn't really justify this perk. So, big F for Fortune Finder. Wicca Wicca Wow, Wicca Wicca West, Jim West, Desperado, Rough Rider, no you don't want none of... Okay, it's the Gunslinger perk. And I'm going to put this in the B tier, and what it does is increase the VATS accuracy of one-handed guns by 25%. And if you're playing a VATS build, and if you're playing Fallout 3, you probably should be playing a VATS build, because VATS are busted. I think Gunslinger is a great perk to take, especially if you're focusing on one-handed weapons, like the Black Hawk, and the Black Hawk. Good weapon, but this isn't a weapon tier list. This is a perk tier list. I'm going to say Gunslinger is a B tier. Good, excellent perk. More accuracy in VATS, better hit chance. You can't go wrong with that. Lead Belly. Everybody's favourite punching bag. When it comes to top 10 worst perks in Fallout, Lead Belly is always there at the bottom. And I am going to put this in F tier, but I'm not going to completely dunk on it. It does have its uses. What it does is 50% less rads from drinking irradiated water. Now, in the early game, for a very specific build, this might be useful because there is a lot of bodies of water that are highly irradiated, and water does heal you by quite a bit in Fallout 3. So I can understand the appeal, but the problem with this perk is you're getting it at level 6, and from most of my playthroughs, I've already got like an overabundance of stim packs. So there's no reason to be using irradiated water over stim packs. If this was a level 2 perk, I would probably bump it up a bit higher, but even then, I would just say suck it up, be stingy, save scum, and hoard and loot so you can get yourself a decent amount of stim packs. Lead Belly, very niche and not very useful. On a tangent, I will say Lead Belly is one of the best perks in Fallout 76, along with the perk for eating dog food. Don't have to worry about food spoiling. But outside of that, yeah, Lead Belly. Too bad, so sad. F tier. And finally, Toughness. Requires 5 endurance. Increases your damage resistance by 10%. And, hey, it even has a dialogue option with Ted Strayer during the quest. You got to shoot him in the head. And this perk, I'm going to put it in A tier. I feel like this is a perk that you should take in every playthrough, because when you hit level 6, you are going to be taking on a lot of enemies, and they're going to be taking down your armor pretty quickly. So any form of survival is really good in the early game. And when you stack Toughness with other perks in the game, you can have up to 85% damage resistance, which overall, if you're playing on a higher difficulty, is extremely useful. On to the level 8 perks. First up is Commando. Increase VATS accuracy with two-handed guns by 25%. This doesn't include the big guns, but it does affect both small guns and energy weapons. And I'm going to put this into the B tier alongside Gunslinger, because it's pretty much the same perk as Gunslinger, except it affects rifles instead of pistols. And if you're going for a VATS build, I think Commando is damn near essential. Next up is Impartial Mediation. Get plus 30 speech when at neutral karma. This perk is going straight into the D tier, and honestly, maybe you could even justify putting it into the F tier, because one, it requires a lot of micromanagement to keep your karma level at neutral. Outside of getting the achievements for hitting level 8, 14, and 20 with certain karma levels, there really isn't much need to keep an eye on your karma in this game. Not only that, but the minimum requirement for this perk is 5 charisma, and I figured, like, if people are going to be looking to increase their speech, they're going to have high charisma anyway and high speech stats, so having plus 30 just seems kind of pointless. Anybody that's looking to be a very talkative character will probably have a lot of speech investment at this point already. And the speech doesn't work the same as Fallout New Vegas. It only improves the chances rather than being a stat requirement. And 9 times out of 10, having positive karma with certain NPCs is a lot more beneficial than having neutral karma. And as I've mentioned before, it's very easy to get a lot of skill points in this game. So plus 30 speech isn't really that hard to get hold of, especially with the bobbleheads and the books that you can find. I guess for a role-playing build, it might be kind of useful, but I would never ever take this. Rad resistance gives you plus 25% radiation resistance, and this is going straight in the F tier because it is extremely redundant. There's so much rad resistance in this game, and rads aren't really that much of a threat. I mean, you've got plenty of rad away, plenty of rad X, different perks that offer radiation resistance in addition to other stuff. It's unnecessary. You don't need it. You know, armor pieces like power armor as radiation resistance. Like, you really don't need rad resistance at all. It's a damn near useless perk, and hell, like, if radiation was a threat, maybe take it, but it isn't, so no. And also, we're getting this at level 8 and with 5 endurance. Like, you're not... By this point, you should have about 20 to 30 radaways that you'll occasionally, like, drink up or whatever the hell you do. Shove it in your veins. Like, you hit minor radiation sickness, pull out your bag, you get your about 5 radaway, chug them, and then move on. And then for maybe like 6 hours later, you might get minor radiation sickness again. It's very pointless. Don't take it. Don't ever take it. It's useless. F tier. Scrounger. Find more ammo. Very simple, and I'm going to put this in C tier. And the reason why I put this in C tier and not F tier like Fortune Finder is because ammo is more useful than caps. You can find more ammo, and you can sell all the ammo that you don't want to make caps anyway. So it's kind of a, you know, 2 effects in one. You know, you find, you know, maybe you're playing a weapon build that has a rare ammo type, you know, maybe like a minigun for whatever reason. You're having trouble finding 5mm ammo. Well, put on Scrounger, you might find more. Using a railway rifle, find more rail spikes. Using dart gun, find more darts. Though darts aren't really that in short supply. Point I'm trying to make is Scrounger will not only let you find ammo, but it will also let you sell and make more money. That's twice as useful as Fortune Finder. Now, granted, I'd probably only take Scrounger with particular weapon builds. Oh, well, this game doesn't have builds, but if I was using a particular weapon, I would use Scrounger, but it's not a perk I would take on all my playthroughs. That's why it's in the middle, C tier.
Put you in a standard recliner! I'm gonna whisper in your ear! Size does matter, bitch!
Size Matters is our next perk, and it increases our big gun skill by 15 and has 3 ranks. So we can get a total of 45 points if we invest in this perk 3 times. Now, unlike the other skill up skills, I see an argument where you can take this, because typically if you're going for a big guns build, you're not really going to be seeing anything decent until a later level. There are some set locations where you can find a flamer or maybe a minigun, but the ammo supply, the caps, the maintenance, it's just not going to be realistic. So what I would do in a big guns playthrough for Fallout 3 is I would invest in unarmed, because the endurance stat boosts both big guns and unarmed. I would invest in unarmed for the early game, and then for the mid game onwards, that's when I would start focusing on big guns. And plus 15 skill up, you know, even maybe just 1 rank would be a decent investment. But because this perk is just simply here's more skill points, and not something like, you know, damage or accuracy or whatever, it is not that good of a perk, especially when you get to the level cap and you're left with like not much else. I mean, any perk that's just a skill up or very situational, that's like a one-time thing. Like, once you hit max level, it's a dead perk basically. So I'm gonna put this in D tier because I can see why it could be useful, but it's, you know, it's not a great perk. And also there is a bug as well, not so much a bug, but an exploit you can use, where there's a raider in the Bethesda ruins that has the big gun skill book on their person, and this raider does respawn, so you can essentially get infinite big gun skills. So if you want to use that bug, this is a definite F tier, don't ever take it. But if you want to avoid bugs and exploits, I'd say this is more of a D tier. Strong back. Increase carry weight by 50. This requires 5 in strength and endurance, and this is a perk that you should take in every playthrough. Even with companions, you're going to be over-encumbered quite a lot in this game, especially with all the craftable items and weapons you can use. And all the collectibles like scrap metal for Walter, blood packs for Vance, pre-war books for the Brotherhood. You know, there's a lot of collectibles and a lot of loot that you'll be grabbing hold of just because it's free money and free XP. And sometimes you'll be juggling weapons. It's honestly like, even if you're not looking to be a melee or tanky character, I think starting the game with 5 endurance and 5 strength is worth it alone just for this perk. 50 carry weight does disappear quite quickly, so I'm going to put this on A tier, especially if you're using heavier weapons like Vengeance. Onto the level 10 perks. First up we have Animal Friend, which has 2 ranks. The first rank, certain animals will stay neutral, and the second rank is the animals will assist in combat, but not against other animals, and this affects dogs, mole rats, Brahmin, and Yaoguai. There's also a dialogue option in Oasis, but Animal Friend is a very roleplay gimmicky perk. It's like one of the few gimmicky perks that you get in this game. And I'm going to put it in C tier because even though it's very handy and very useful to have a Yaoguai fight on your behalf, it is very situational. So I wouldn't really rely on it too much. I think there's only Yaoguai in certain areas of the capital wasteland. And this doesn't affect animals like the rad scorpions either. And not only that, but it does require a charisma level of 6. So you do have to kind of like focus towards it. You know, you have to give up some special stats in order to take this perk. And again, the best part of this perk is in the second rank. So you're going to have to take this perk twice to get the best part of it. Like I said, very niche, very roleplay-ish, but not a perk I would go out of my way to get. But I won't sit here and tell you that it's a terrible perk because it does have uses. So I'm going to put it in the C tier because I don't really feel strongly about it, either negatively or positively. Finesse gives you a higher critical hit chance, equivalent to +5 luck. So that basically means 5% increase to your crit chances. And I think this is an A tier. I take this on every single character. It's one of the perks that will always be there. And granted, I think, you know, stacking this up with other luck boosting and crit boosting effects in the game turns your character into an absolute wrecking machine. Now, granted, the finesse perk does benefit more with a higher luck, so, you know, there's no point dumping luck to 1 and then grabbing finesse because you're not going to get much crit out of it. But a high luck build with finesse on top, you're going to be hitting those critical hits constantly. So yeah, take this on every playthrough and do more damage. Simple as that. Here and now, another perk that is very popular to shit on. So here and now, what that does is it gives you a free level up. So if, let's say you take this at level 10, you instantly get level 11. Honestly, it's a waste of a perk. Everyone knows it. You know, there's more than enough XP in the game. It's for probably people who are impatient, so don't take it. I was thinking to myself, why would I ever take this? And I thought, well, maybe a speedrunner might take here and now, but I'm pretty sure a speedrunner would be beating the game before level 10 anyway, so even in that situation, it's pretty useless. So yeah, don't take here and now, just be patient, get up to the next level like a normal person. There's plenty of enemies, there's plenty of quests, there's plenty of pre-war books and scrap metal to turn in. You know, you've got more than enough sources of XP. You do not need this perk. F. Big F. No respects. Next perk is Mr. Sandman. You can silently kill sleeping targets and get a XP gain of 50. I'm going to put this in the D tier. This is a pure roleplay perk, and the reason why I would never take it, honestly, even as a sneak build, you typically have to sneak up to a sleeping target, you know, pickpocket them whilst they're sleeping, and then you'll get an option to kill them or pickpocket. And during the Sandman animation, your character stands up and does the kill, and that standing up actually breaks sneak. So you basically lose the whole point of the perk, which is to be a sneaky kill them in your sleep build. So yeah, pretty bad. The only upside is it's 50 XP per kill, so if you kill somebody that's fairly weak and would only give you 10 XP on a regular kill, you get 5 times the amount of XP instead. But yeah, this is a roleplay perk. I wouldn't take it, like, ever. Next up, we have the Mysterious Stranger. An NPC called the Mysterious Stranger will appear occasionally in VATs to help you. There's about 10% chance to show up, but you'll only show up and kill targets that are at 150 HP or below. There's also a dialogue in Mothership Zeta that references him if you have this perk. I'm going to put this in D tier because his low chance to show up is pretty unreliable, and I for one would rather take perks that are reliable. Simple as that. Nerd Rage. When you drop below 20% health, your damage resistance is increased by 50%, and your strength is also increased up to the maximum of 10. And I'm going to put this in D tier because, honestly, I don't think it's worth it being at that low health. You can be pretty tanky with low health, but personally, with how Fallout 3's healing works, if you're getting low health, you just have to have a stim pack on your hotkeys and just keep hitting that hotkey and instantly getting your health back. Because unlike Fallout New Vegas' hardcore mode, or even Fallout 4, stim packs don't heal over time, they heal instantly. So there'll be no situation where you're going to be benefiting at low health. Now, if you want to see a Nerd Rage that actually works well, you should go and check out my video on a Nerd Rage build I did for Fallout 4. That's how Nerd Rage is done. But in this game, not so much. And increasing the strength to 10, it's like, oh yeah, you got a little bit more carry weight and a little bit more points in your melee skill, which, truth be told, if I'm going to be at below 20% health, I probably don't want to be in melee range of anything. Especially something like a Deathclaw, which will probably get you into Nerd Rage, or if you're at half health, the attack might just skip Nerd Rage and kill you outright. So Nerd Rage, not worth the trouble, and you can get damage resistance from other places like Med-X, Perks, and Armor, so really not worth it. Night Person increases your perception and intelligence by 2 between the hours of 6 PM and 6 AM. And I'm going to give this a big, juicy F, because these are only temporary improvements. Doesn't affect your skill point gains when you level up. So if you level up at midnight, you're not going to get an extra bunch of skill points because of the intelligence boost. Not only that, but if people are playing with 10 intelligence, you're only going to see half the perks benefit. And on top of that, what it basically does is only increase a handful of your skills by 4. So like perception, you're going to get like more lockpick, energy weapons, and explosives. 4-point increase in them. 3 skills, and intelligence, medicine, repair, and science, 4 points each. It's very meager, very underwhelming. It's not going to help you do anything in the game in a practical sense. And because, unlike Fallout 4, your special stats can't be overclocked above 10, you're not going to see much of a benefit here either. It's a terrible perk. Don't take it ever. It's absolutely worthless. I can't say anything nice about it, honestly. It's terrible. Not even for a roleplay. I don't even have any dialogue options for it. That's what I think of it. We're on to the level 12 perks now. And the first one we got to deal with is Cannibal. Regain 25 hit points when eating a corpse. There is one dialogue option that we can use in Andale. The witnesses will turn hostile, and you lose karma. And I'm going to put this in the F tier because 1, it's a roleplay perk. 2, 25 HP is fuck all. And 3, the karma loss is 1. You get -1 karma for eating a corpse in front of people. Because -1 karma is pretty underwhelming. It's pretty terrible. Like devour a corpse. Like stealing an item is -5. Eating a corpse is -1. It's pretty ridiculous. Killing non-evil characters, 100. -100. Point I'm trying to make is it's a roleplay perk that doesn't give you much benefit. And even if you want to be an absolute abhorrent evil character, -1 karma for eating a corpse. And there's a long animation involved, and it doesn't even heal you by that much. It's just not worth it. There's better ways to be an evil character. So I'm throwing it in the bin, F tier. Terrible. Next up is Fast Metabolism. It increases your healing by 20% with stim packs, and also works with the Alien Biogel from the Mothership Zeta DLC. I'm going to give this a B tier, and this is a pretty good perk. It's not essential. In fact, if you've got a high intelligence and you've got points in the medicine skill, you probably can get away with not taking this. But for low intelligence, with no investment in medicine, this perk is still pretty damn good. This is Life Giver, and what it does is increase your health by 30 points. And I'm going to put this in D tier because it's extremely redundant. I don't think having extra hit points is worth it, especially with the requirement of this perk. It's 6 endurance. I think with 6 endurance or more, you're going to have a decent amount of hit points per level up. And combine that with all the armor that you can get in the game with the damage resistance, 30 HP isn't really that significant. I think this perk really could have been better if it didn't have an endurance requirement, like it was a health boost for people with low endurance. But outside of that, I don't think it's really worth it unless you really want to be an extremely beefy, tanky build with a load of health. I don't think this perk is really worth the trouble. And I also should mention it does have a dialogue in Oasis for role-playing purposes. But yeah, overall, Life Giver, D, not really useful, underwhelming, honestly. Next up is Pyromaniac. This is one of the rare perks that actually has a very niche and specific build around it, which is inflicting fire damage. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to give this a D because, well, for similar reasons to why Demolition Expert was ranked so low. So basically, Pyromaniac increases fire damage by 50%, but unfortunately, it doesn't increase the damage over time. So if you hit somebody, set them on fire, and leave them, that dot will not be increased by 50%. It's only the inflicting wounds that will increase the damage. And this does affect the Shish Kebab, the Flamer, the Fire Lance, Incinerator, Rapid Torch Flamer, and Slow Burn Flamer. Fair enough, whatever. Pretty good. If you're playing a Shish Kebab build, you can do quite a lot of damage with it. The unfortunate thing is, it doesn't affect any of the uniques. So the Nuka Grenade fire doesn't work. So you got Nuka Grenades that are basically fire bombs. Isn't even affected by Demolition Expert or Pyromaniac. Absolute waste. The Burn Master, which is the unique flamer in the base game, doesn't get a benefit from Pyromaniac. And the Zurong unique Chinese pistol that can inflict fire damage on shot also isn't affected by this perk. So you've got like several fire weapons that aren't affected by Pyromaniac, and that to me is a big L. And not only that, the stat requirement for this perk is 60 explosives. Not a single weapon that is affected by Pyromaniac is an explosive weapon. We could have had something going here with Nuka Grenades, Demolition Expert and Pyromaniac. Imagine how much damage you could do with a Nuka Grenade if those perks boosted the damage of a Nuka Grenade. But no, the game doesn't allow it. And there might be mods that fix that, but hey, we're ranking these based on a vanilla experience, and this is D perk because you've basically got a perk that advertises increased fire damage and it doesn't affect half the weapons. So thanks for wasting my time. Fuck you. D tier. Robotic Expert. Gain 25% damage bonus against robots, and you can deactivate the robots from sneak. There's also 6 dialogue options as well. And I'm going to give this a B tier. This is a really good perk, especially during that mid to late 20s area where you're pretty much running out of decent perks to choose from. There's a lot of robots in this game, so doing extra damage to them is very beneficial, especially against the Robo Brains and the Sentry Bots. Not only that, but you can deactivate them and then kill them to get more XP, which is also very useful. So as a high intelligence with a decent amount of sneak, you can pretty much take out a good amount of robots with minimal effort. Silent Running increases your sneak skill by 10, and you can run without any penalty to your sneak. And this perk by itself isn't very good, but if you're stacking it with stuff like this Chinese stealth armor or a stealth boy, you're pretty much invisible to the enemies, and this might actually boost or be pretty good if you combine it with the Mr. Sandman perk that I mentioned earlier. But it gets to the point where the only way NPCs will detect you is if you shoot them. So for a sneak build, I think this is pretty much an essential perk. So it's going to go into B tier just for the specific niche that it fills. Sniper increases your VATS accuracy to heads by 25%. And I'm going to put this in the A tier because if you're playing a VATS build, and if it's Fallout 3, you should be, getting more accuracy to headshots is pretty damn good. And that's all I got to say. You got to aim for the head. You got to kill him. 25% more accuracy. I mean, what's not to like, right? Right. The first of the level 14 perks is Adamantium Skeleton. What this does is give you a 50% damage reduction to limb damage. So this isn't like a reduction to all damage. You'll still take full damage from most attacks, but the durability of your limbs is reduced by 50%. I'm going to put this in B tier because by the late game, you're going to come across quite a lot of sentry bots, robo brains, and other stuff that can cripple your limbs pretty easily. And if they take out your legs, that's your mobility pretty much done. Take out your arms, that's your aim done. And concussions, never good. I would say that this perk is very essential to take in your playthroughs. However, I wouldn't prioritize it. I wouldn't necessarily get it immediately at level 14. I would get it later on, or if you feel like your limbs are getting crippled way too often, I'd say take it, but this is definitely an important perk that every playthrough can benefit from, but not a perk that is high priority. So for that reason, I'll put it into B tier. Next up is Chemist, which doubles the duration of chems. Well, not just chems, but anything that's addictive. So that will include alcohol and Nuka-Cola Quantum. And I'm going to put this in B tier because being able to double the duration of certain chems will make dungeons very, very, very good. Chems are powerful in Fallout 3. Psycho, Buff Out, Med-X, Jet if you're going for a VATS build. And the addiction problem isn't really a problem at all because you can have your laboratory in your player home remove all addictions. Plus, there's another perk that reduces the chances of getting addiction, which we'll cover soon enough. So I'm going to put this into B tier. This is kind of in the same boat as Adamantium Skeleton, where every playthrough will benefit from having this perk, but it's not a perk you should prioritize getting. The next two perks are basically the same, Contract Killer and Lawbringer. The only difference is one is evil karma and one is good karma. Contract Killer, you kill good karma characters, take their ears and sell them to an NPC. And Lawbringer, kill evil karma characters, take their fingers and sell them to a good NPC. And essentially, the differences are minor. With Contract Killer and Lawbringer, they both adjust your karma by 10 when you turn in the body parts. However, Contract Killer will give you 10 to 15 caps, and Lawbringer will only give you 5 to 10, which is not as much caps. This is purely a roleplay sort of perk. However, there are some secondary benefits. For example, each location where you turn in these ears will have a skill book located at them. So that's basically two free skill points. And you can take both of these perks in your playthrough. There isn't a karma requirement for them. It's just level 14. So in theory, you could maybe use these perks as like a way to keep yourself at neutral karma by turning in, ears on each side or fingers, whatever. And there's also with the Lawbringer perk, there's an NPC in the world that has a unique spiked knuckles, which can only be accessible if you have the Lawbringer perk. So if you're a punching character and you're interested in some unique spiked knuckles called the Plunkett's Valid Points, get the Lawbringer perk because that's how you get that unique weapon. In fact, I guess if you're a collector of unique weapons, you're going to have to take Lawbringer regardless. But because this perk is very roleplay and all it provides you with a minor increase or decrease in karma and very little caps, and let's face it, by the time you're level 14, you're already rolling in caps and you're probably either a very good character or a very evil character. So, yeah, it's kind of, I'd say it's a perk that appears too late in the game, if you ask me. So I'm going to put it into D tier. This next perk might surprise people. It's Cyborg, and I'm going to put it into the S tier. Now, this does have quite a requirement. You need to put 60 points into science and medicine. But what this does makes the game significantly easier, especially in the harder difficulties. It increases your damage resistance, poison resistance, and radiation resistance by 10%. Now, poison resistance, there's only one source of poison in the game, so it doesn't matter. Radiation, again, doesn't matter. You got more than enough Radaway and Rad-X. But 10% damage resistance is nothing to shake your finger at. It is actually the best damage resistance perk in the entire game. Better than Bark Skin, better than Toughness. And I guess also it gives you plus 10 in energy weapons, which doesn't really matter, but I'd say 10% damage resistance in Fallout 3 is very valuable. It's definitely a perk you want to lean towards, and with all the hack computers, bobbleheads, and skill books, you shouldn't have any problem getting to medicine or science 60 by the time you hit level 14. In fact, you'd be focusing on science anyway just to hack through some terminals. So Cyborg is a S tier perk in my opinion. Light Step. What this perk does is makes you never set off floor-based traps. So this will be frag mines, tripwires, pressure plates, and bear traps. Although this does not affect your companions, so you may have to keep an eye out for the traps regardless. In fact, that kind of makes this perk not as valuable as it could be. In fact, I'm going to put this in C tier because, to be honest, it's not a perk I personally use. Because if you play the game on PC, you can save scum, which I guess is a silly counter argument for anything, but with a bit of care and attention to detail, you should be able to spot traps with ease. And if you're playing the game all the time. If you're very familiar with the game, you'll know where traps are, so I wouldn't say this is a very valuable perk to get at all. And as I said before, your followers can set off traps as well, so it doesn't even let you ignore traps. Like, you can walk over a landmine, but if you got a follower, even Sergeant RL3 hovering behind you, they're going to set off those mines. So it kind of makes the perk redundant, because the whole point of Lightstep is you can just waltz on through an area and not even acknowledge the traps. But if your followers are blowing them up instead, then they're taking damage, they're needing stim packs. It's so not a good perk in my opinion, but I'm gonna put it in C tier because I can still understand the value of it. I think it's another perk that would have probably benefited from being earlier than level 14. Alright, last perk for the level 14 section is Master Trader, which gives you a 25% discount when purchasing items from a store or trader. And there's also like a dialogue option with Uncle Ro at Canterbury Commons. And honestly, this perk is pretty terrible. In fact, there's really no reason to get it, because I found that, again, level 14, you've got plenty of caps, and you're getting to the point where you got more caps than you know what to do with. You've got loot that you can't get rid of because all the merchants are drying up. You sell all your loot, they run out of caps, you still have loot left to spend. This doesn't affect the repair service, from what I can tell, which is pretty terrible as well. So if you're running around with a unique weapon or a rare weapon or something like the Alien Blaster, I guess pre-DLC, then you're going to be pretty rough. And the annoying thing about this discounted service is it can't go below base price. Now, according to the wiki, the fandom wiki, with this perk and the 60 barter that is required to get it, and I guess you also need 6 charisma to get this perk as well. But with this perk and 60 barter, this discount has a cap, and merchants will not sell you items below its base value. So let's say that you have a shotgun that's worth 100 caps. Even with 100, whether you have 60 barter and this perk or 100 barter and this perk, that value, that shotgun will always be 100 caps to buy. You'll never reduce that. And to me, that's kind of a big downside, because the whole point of having discounted stuff is to pay less than what it's worth, right? So with that, I'd say this is a complete waste of time getting this perk. Skip it, and in case you can't figure it out, I'm putting this in F tier because, like I said, how can you discount something, a perk for a 25% discount, and you can't even buy stuff below the base value of stuff? No, F. Moving on to the level 16 perks, and there isn't that many of them. But what there is very good. Well, actually, half of them are really good. The other half, not so much. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. And here's the first part of that bridge. Action boy or girl. Increase your action points by 25. And, well, it's VATS. It's for VATS builds. I'm going to put this in A tier because with VATS, you take like 90% less damage. And with all the accuracy bonuses, critical hits, bonuses, and a certain perk that we'll see at level 20. I mean, come on. It's amazing. It's bloody amazing. And the more time you can spend in VATS, the better. Now, even with the perk that will be coming up at level 20, Action Boy and Action Girl, that increase in your max AP is going to be very valuable, as you're going to be able to target more enemies in that single turn. And it's also very beneficial with certain weapons. Now, handguns typically have a lower AP cost than rifles, and rifles lower than big guns. So for whatever reason, if you're using a larger weapon in VATS, you might be able to get yourself a couple more hits during the VATS animation. And as I said, the 90% damage reduction during VATS, I mean, the more you can do in it, the more protected you are on those higher difficulties. So even if you're not a VATS build, it's good to have this in the pocket. I give that an A tier. This next perk I'm going to put into S tier. It's called Better Criticals. Increases your critical hit damage by 50%, and this includes both the random crits and the sneak criticals. And the reason why it belongs in S tier is because, well, hopefully by the time you hit level 16, you're going to have some decent luck, decent gear, finesse, and a unique weapon that has a decent crit modifier on it. If not, sneak attacks are also a thing as well. Now, there's plenty of armor and gear in Fallout 3 that can increase your luck stat, so getting critical hits reliably and consistently shouldn't be much of a problem, and if you're hitting these crits often, that means you're proccing this damage a lot more often, and there isn't that many ways to increase your damage output in Fallout 3, which is why this belongs in S tier, because it's probably the highest damage boost that you can get in the game. Even if it is reliant on getting critical hits, it's very, very powerful, especially with the right weapons like a sniper rifle or Lincoln's repeater, for example. And we fall right off from S tier straight down to D tier. This next perk is chem resistant and it reduces your chance of addiction by 50%. And honestly, if you've got a player home, what's the point, right? It's pretty underwhelming. You've got a player home, you can buy a laboratory, you can cure yourself of addiction, or you can go to a medic in one of the settlements and get your addiction removed. And again, level 16, you're going to have plenty of chems stored up in your pocket because they don't weigh anything. So let's say you get addicted to buff out, well, just keep taking buff out until you can remove the addiction. It's not the end of the world. So I'm going to put this in D tier because it's a very redundant perk. Does synergize well with chemist, but again, unless you're doing a specific run like a no fast travel playthrough, or I don't know. it's not a great perk, to be honest. So pass. Tag, you're it. No, it sucks. So what this does is it lets you select a 4th tag skill. If you remember at the start of the game, you pick 3 tag skills, increases these skills by 15, gives you a little bit of a head start. This perk, however, comes at level 16 and lets you tag another perk. Now, I'm not a fan of this perk at all. It's another skill up perk. Only gives you 15 skill points, and by level 16, you're pretty much done with all your main skills and even some of your secondary skills. So having a perk that just increases a random skill to 15 isn't going to be much use to you, especially with the amount of skill books, bobbleheads, and yeah, like I've already been over this with other perks. You get more than enough skill points in the game. That tag would be a bit of a waste of a perk, so I'm going to put this in D tier. Unless you're extremely desperate to boost up a particular perk, it's a bit of a waste. Alright, moving on to level 18, which is a bit more varied. I think level 16 is literally a 2 perk area. Level 18, the first perk we have is Computer Whiz. A second chance with locked out hacks. I'm going to put this in F tier because, one, the hacking minigame isn't really that hard. It's actually pretty easy once you figure it out. It's like Caravan. It's not as hard or as confusing as people say it is. But on top of that, if you're not too confident with these kind of puzzles, you can save the game first and then tackle them. I know it's save scumming, but yeah. And also the requirement for it, 7 intelligence and 70 science. So I feel like this should have been a low intelligence perk rather than 7 intelligence, because it just makes sense roleplay wise. Like, if you're too stupid to hack the computer, well, have another go, you know? Like a 7 intelligence. I don't know, it's a waste of a perk. It's F. Next up is Concentrated Fire. Increases VATS accuracy by 5% on each queued attack on the same body part. Now, it says in the description, increased hit chance on subsequent hits, but what it actually does is it applies the accuracy immediately when you queue something up. So let's say if I aimed at an arm that had 40% accuracy and then I queued up 4 attacks, that would go up by 45, 50, 55, 60. That's pretty much what it would go up by. And then all them 4 shots would have a 60% chance to hit. And I'd put this on a B tier because, to be honest, like, if you've got a high gun skill or a high energy weapon skill, you're not going to have much trouble landing your hits anywhere. This is probably something more focused around sniper builds, like people who are trying to land VATS hits from halfway across the map. So there is a purpose for it, but stacking this perk up with the commando, gunslinger, or sniper perk is going to pretty much guarantee you to hit stuff. I will say a downside of this perk also is its requirement. You need to have 60 points in both small guns and energy weapons. So it kind of splits up your stat allocation a bit. But again, as I've constantly brought up in this video, you're going to have more than enough skill points going around, especially if you're a high intelligence, you have comprehension and educated. you're going to have no problems getting to 60 guns, 60 energy weapons by level 18. And, you know, even though I kind of took a shit on tag in the last section, that might be a way to go. I mean, tag gives you 15 points. Cyborg, which is an S tier perk, increases your energy weapons by 10. So there's definitely ways, you know, even if you're playing with like a Lincoln's Repeater or the sniper rifles, you know, if you're not using energy weapons at all, you can still get your energy weapon skill up pretty quickly. So for a VATS build, concentrated fire, definitely a B tier. Reason I don't put it in A or S is it's more about long range fighting rather than any form of fighting. You know, you won't really benefit from this perk if you're up close and personal. All right, next perk is Infiltrator. And it's pretty much the same as Computer Whiz, except it's for lockpick and perception. Get a second attempt with a broken lock, and the only way you break locks in this game is by trying to force them. And to me personally, it's very rare that I force locks. In fact, I think the only time I will force a lock is if I'm already got 100 in my lock picking skill and I'm getting a very easy lock, and it's a 100% chance to do it. This is again another waste of a perk. All the things I said about Computer Whiz applies here. In fact, I consider this even worse than Computer Whiz. So obviously this is going to go into F tier. Not much else to say about it. Next up is Paralyzing Palm. 30% chance to apply paralysis for 30 seconds with an unarmed VATS attack, and it requires 70 in the unarmed skill. And this is actually a pretty useful perk, especially against certain enemies that might be a pain in the ass to kill, like a Deathclaw. You know, ragdolling them is very valuable. However, it is very niche. It's still only a 1 in 3 chance at best to do it, so it's not something I would heavily rely on. But it's a cool perk, and it is one of the rare perks in the game that's actually, you know, for specific build. You know, a gimmick. You know, if you want to play it unarmed, you have a perk for an unarmed skill like Iron Fist and Paralysis Palm, or Paralyzing Palm, I should say. Pretty damn good combo if you ask me. So I'm going to put this in B tier. Obviously, if you're not an unarmed build, or if you wanted to go in melee, then you're kind of shit out of luck. And looking over the level 18 perks, level 18 is probably a good time to pick up perks from like the previous levels that you might have skipped. Maybe another rank of Iron Fist. Etymologist might be a good one to pick up at this point. Child of Heart, if you're looking to have an easier time in Little Lamplight. Or Chemist even. But yeah, overall level 18 is kind of a dip for perks, to be honest. Alright, we're dipping into the level 20 perks now, and this is the level cap for the vanilla version of Fallout 3. Bethesda upped the level cap to 30 with the Broken Steel DLC. And the first perk we're looking at is Explorer. Every location in the world is revealed on your map, and this does not really help you much. I can only think of one use case for this, and that is to help you get the achievement for discovering locations. But by the time you hit level 20, chances are you've already got that achievement. And part of the game is to be an explorer. You're the lone wanderer. You're going to wander around the wasteland. You're going to see an empty triangle in your compass, and you're going to head towards it to see what's there. That's part of what the game is about. And Explorer kind of like takes that out of it. And not only that, but this doesn't necessarily discover locations, so you can't fast travel to locations with the Explorer perk. This just basically reveals them. So if you're having trouble finding a specific location that you haven't discovered yet, that you might have read about on a wiki or a guide, then you're, you know, if like say for example, it's like, oh, where's this bobblehead? Oh, it's in Deathclaw Sanctuary. All right, I'm gonna go use the Explorer perk to find it on the map and walk towards it. But that's, you know, it's kind of stupid, because if you're looking up guides to find out where bobbleheads and locations and unique loot is, you're gonna just look up. Like, honestly, like, I know it's kind of a lazy counterpoint for Explorer, but Google. Why take this perk when you can just Google it? That's the yeah. This is an F tier. Don't take it. It's a waste of a perk. And also, apparently, there's a bug where it doesn't even reveal map markers. So it's even worse if that bug actually happens to you. Grim Reaper's Sprint is next. Restores all action points on a VATS kill. What can be said about this perk that hasn't already been said by every other person that's done a top 10 list or tier list or any video covering Fallout 3 perks? Like, I can't really add to the conversation. We all know that this is the best perk in the game. I've been alluding to it a bit throughout the video. So, as I've mentioned before, when you're in VATS, you're going to be taking only 10% damage, so that you get basically a 90% damage reduction whilst using VATS. And this perk essentially lets you constantly chain VATS, because with all the damage you'll be dealing by level 20, all the weapons with high crit damages and high crit rates, you're going to be hitting stuff really hard. Unless it's like something really spongy like a behemoth or an albino rad scorpion, you're not going to have any issues getting kills. And this perk is the reason why VATS, and I guess most playthroughs in general just involve going into VATS, killing everything, moving on, because you're unkillable. And with Grim Reaper Sprint, being able to restore all those action points allows you to constantly have more uptime inside VATS. Now, the kills have to be of your own doing, so your companions can't get the kills, the mysterious stranger can't get the kills, you know, environmental kills that you've caused, you know, like an explosive car or the burning effect from a flamer, damage over time stuff like that you triggered. That doesn't trigger the perk. It has to be like the killing shot, so, you know, a direct hit with a melee weapon or a gun. That being said, you know, most times you are going to be getting the kill, and most times you're going to be fine. Like I said, I'm just rambling here. There's nothing I can say about Grim Reaper Sprint that you haven't already heard. It's an S tier, and honestly, out of all the level 20 perks, this is probably the best one to take. But luckily, with the Broken Steel DLC, you can take more than one level 20 perk. So, hurrah, I guess. Right, next up is Ninja, and depending on what console you play on may determine how you feel about this perk. So for the low stat requirement of 80 sneak and 80 melee weapons, you can have 15% better critical chance with melee or unarmed weapons, and an increase to the melee and unarmed sneak critical damage by 25%. Now, according to the Fallout fandom wiki, there is a bug on PC only where the 15% critical chance does not apply, and the only way you can fix that is with the unofficial patch. But as I stated in the intro to this video, kind of looking at these as a vanilla experience, so no mods, and that does include the unofficial patch, unfortunately. So we're going to have to take that into consideration. I think if you're playing with melee and unarmed on console, I think this is definitely an A tier perk. But if we're playing on PC, I'm going to have to say B tier. Now, to be completely honest, with all the stealth that you can stack up with the stealth armor, silent running, you should be able to have no problems going around doing sneak attacks. But this is a very specific build, and I think the stat requirement is really high, even when I've said in the past that you will have plenty of stats to throw around with all the access to skill points. 80 sneak and 80 melee it's quite a lot to look into. You have to be a pretty focused, I'd say you'd pretty much have to think about this perk way early in the game and lean into it and like be a dedicated melee like stealth character. But regardless, this is a really fun perk. It's usually a perk I will take in all of my playthroughs, and as far as I can tell, it works exactly the same as it does in New Vegas. And in New Vegas, if I'm playing an unarmed or melee character, this is a perk I will always take, because it is always useful to have an extra bonus in sneak attacks. Now, the wording of the perk is a bit weird. It does say like critical chance of melee and unarmed, but then starts a completely new sentence and says sneak attack criticals do 25% more damage, which the wording implies that it'll affect all sneak attack damage, which would be nice, but unfortunately that's not the case. You only get the sneak attack critical bonus for the melee and unarmed. But out of all the level 20 perks, I'd say this is the second best choice. Even if you're not playing a melee character, it is useful to have, access to a decent like stealth melee attack. So I'm gonna put this in B tier. The final level 20 perk we're looking at is solar powered. Between the hours of 6 AM and 6 PM, your strength is increased by 2 and you regenerate 1 HP every 5 in-game minutes, which in the real world time is 10 seconds. That's right, 1 HP every 10 seconds. And if you wait in-game for 1 hour, you recover 12 hit points. 1 HP every 10 real-world seconds. which means you wait between the hours of 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. You're only getting 144 health back. And with the requirement of Endurance 7, I don't even think that's your full health, especially like in Endurance 7 at level 20. Like, you're not even going to recover your full health back in a day. This perk is awful. Like, it advertises health regeneration while it's outdoors, but it's so slow, it's useless. It's absolutely useless. And by the time you're level 20, you have so many stim packs. You've got hundreds of stim packs. Why is health regen even a consideration? It's not like Fallout New Vegas with like Rad Child, and you know, even the solar powered in Fallout New Vegas was buffed quite a bit as well, to be honest. But you know, you got a lot of healing over time on FNV's hardcore mode. Like, but in Fallout 3, there is no reason to take this perk. This perk is honestly like the biggest middle finger. Like, imagine like your first playthrough back in 2008 and you hit the level cap and you pick solar powered, and that's that. You picked one of the worst perks in the game to finish your character off. And like, what the fuck were they thinking? I'm gonna put this in F tier, but if I was gonna break the rules, I would put this below F tier. Like, this is, I'd rather, it's almost as bad as taking a perk that's functionally broken. Like, it's bad. It's so bad. And yeah, +2 strength for during the daytime. Whatever. I don't think that's really worth it, to be honest. You get an increase of what, 20 carry weight and 4 points of melee damage, or the melee skill, I should say. And this, yeah. And it's not even like if this was like Fallout 4 where you could overclock your strength past 10, you know, stack this with like buff out and other stuff, like maybe I could see an argument for it, but no. And again, Endurance 7, and keep in mind this +2 strength bonus completely negated by a perk that you take at level 30. So again, like, there is zero reason to take this perk. Zero. Alright, we finished up with the vanilla perks. All the perks from this point were introduced with the Broken Steel DLC, which increased the level cap from 20 to 30. And the first set of perks that you get at level 22 is Deep Sleep. Become well rested from sleeping in any bed. So typically when you become well rested, you'd have to sleep in a bed that you own or rent from a hotel, and you'd get 10% XP bonus for 8 hours. And the fact that this perk comes at level 22 is honestly really bad. That's pretty much why it's going to go into F tier. It's a perk that you really, really don't need. It's kind of a waste of a perk. It's probably better off to just get Swift Learner. That way you don't have to micromanage sleeping every time. But this perk is pretty terrible. I would not ever take it. And, you know, because it comes at level 22, you're going to be like 8 levels away from the max level cap. So you're only going to benefit from this perk for about 8 levels, making it a very unreliable perk. Next up is Puppies. If Dogmeat dies, he's replaced by his puppies to carry on his legacy or whatever. I don't know. This is going to be a biased one, and probably one that most people will disagree with, but I'm going to put this in D tier, and the reason why I do this is because I'm not a big fan of dog meat. I just find having a dog that just runs in and gets himself blown up and killed is kind of a headache. I'm kind of fine with just having Sharon along and no dog meat, but that's down to my preferences, so if you guys rate this high, I wouldn't blame you. Now, the weird thing about dog meat or puppies is the dog that respawns in Dogmeat's place actually has more health, so you're trying to like make your dog companion tanky. It might be beneficial to take this perk and kill it. I guess, I don't know, kill the dog and then go find the puppy at Vault 101, and you got basically a dog that has more health. Now, again, this perk is pretty late in the game. It's like again, level 22, and I guess just go on a slight tangent, all these perks that were introduced with the Broken Steel DLC are pretty bad in the sense that they should have been introduced at a lower level in some cases, and because of that, it's really negative. Like, Obsidian kind of learned from this mistake where like they have like DLCs, they introduce new perks, and these new perks would come scattered throughout the entire level system rather than just, you know, oh, you've got the DLC, well, we're going to increase your level cap from 30 to 35 and all the new perks are going to be in those free stages. Good luck, have fun, you know. So, you know, Obsidian kind of did a better job with introducing new perks to the leveling system than Bethesda did. Like, imagine trying to get Light Touch, the Light Touch perk in New Vegas, but you had to wait until level 32 to get it. I mean, it was pretty rough. But anyway, tangent over. I'm going to put this in D tier because I'm not a big fan of dog meat as a companion, and that's purely the only reason why I don't like it. The next perk is Quantum Chemist. With every 10 Nuka-Colas that you obtain, it will automatically convert them into Nuka-Cola Quantums. And I'm going to put this in B tier because it basically removes the dilemma of, do you give Sierra 30 Quantums, or do you keep the Quantums for yourself and just stick it out with the 2 schematics that you have? It's all about whether you want to optimize how many Nuka Grenades you can craft per playthrough, but this perk removes that. I will note that this does not affect the Ice Cold Nuka-Colas, and it also requires a 70 Science skill, which isn't displayed in-game. But overall, I'd say this is a perk worth taking, and out of all the new perks so far, this is probably one of the better ones to take. Alright, level 24 perks, and oh brother, like, this, wow. Level 24. This level 24 and level 25 might be the part where you go back and pick up some of them perks that you skipped in the lower levels, because level 24 is a dead zone. Alright, first up, Devil's Highway, Escalate to Heaven, and Karmic Rebalance. I'm going to cover these all at the same time, and they're all in the F tier because what they basically do is adjust your karma. Like, Devil's Highway sets you to very evil, Escalate to Heaven sets you to very good, and Karmic Rebalance sets you to neutral. What can I say? I mean, I can't think of a situation where you would actually need to take this, and there's plenty of ways to improve your karma and decrease your karma. Like, you know, if you want to increase your karma, just collect a lot of scrap metal and give it to Walter for free. If you want to lower your karma, start stealing. Not to mention the Lawbringer and the Contract Killer perks, which, you know, don't offer much, but they're there. And, you know, you can use them techniques to keep yourself at neutral, but it's, yeah, it's honestly a waste of a perk. Pick something up from the previous levels. And the other perk that you get at level 24 is No Weaknesses. Raise all your special stats lower than 5 up to 5. And I'm going to put this in D tier because, well, if you guys have played this game and you know what happens at level 30, this perk is absolutely redundant. I mean, if this perk was, you know, at level 15, you could make an argument for it. But typically, unless you're going for a very niche or very weird special allocation from the start of the game, I don't think this perk is worth it. Typically, I try and avoid having any of my special skills start at below 5. I think usually my lowest special skill would be at 5, and then everything will be at 6s and 7s. No Weaknesses is quite a weak perk, haha. Especially with, again, what happens at level 30. No, there's not really much reason to take this perk at all. This perk is not terrible, it has a use, but you only really have that use from between 24 and 30, and that's assuming that you're not taking the other perk at level 30, which we'll talk about when we get there. Again, I think this perk would have been a bit better if it came a lot earlier, like a level 10 or a level 15 perk, but because of where it's positioned and the fact we get it at level 24, yeah, bad. D. First, there was the Brotherhood of Steel. Then there was Broken Steel. And now, Nerves of Steel. And it's going to go in the F tier. Now, Nerves of Steel in New Vegas, really good. But in Fallout 3, very bad. It's much like the same problem as Solar Powered, where it advertises, hey, you get an increase of regeneration of action points. And you think, hey, action point regen for a build? For a VATS build, that sounds amazing. You know, I don't need to worry about getting the finishing blows. You know, even against tanky enemies where I can't kill them, you know, and I don't get my Grim Reaper sprint, at least Nerve of Steel will pick up the slack a little bit. It only increases your action points by 1 every 10 seconds. So that's the same rate as the health regen from Solar Powered, and because of that, it is damn near worthless. It's, yeah, too slow for my liking, and just to put in perspective for Fallout New Vegas, the New Vegas version of this perk gives you an increase by 20% of your refresh rate, which is a lot more reliable than just 1 action point per 10 seconds. So a perk that really should have been picking up the slack from when Grim Reaper Sprint wasn't refreshing, because in the late game, you are going to be fighting Super Mutant Overlords and Albino Rad Scorpions that will have a lot of health. So there'll be times where you'll enter VATS, only take off half an enemy's health, and then you'd have to sit there and wait and actually use the game controller to aim your weapons. Nerves of Steel really should have been there to pick up the slack in the instances where Grim Reaper Sprint might not provide, but it completely fails on that regard, and because of that I'm going to put it in F tier. Alright, next up, oh jeez. Rad Tolerance. You get no effects from minor radiation poisoning. So what's the minor radiation poisoning is just -1 endurance, and again level 26 you're going to be having hundreds of rad away in your back pocket. There isn't any benefits to having minor radiation. It's not like the perk that we get from Myra with a mutation. You know, if what is this? This is a perk that doesn't belong at level 26. It belongs in like level 2. It's F. It's so F. It's so stupid. Right, next up is Warmonger. Finally, a good fucking perk. And funnily enough, it's a good perk for the same reasons as Quantum Chemist. What this does, and it requires 7 intelligence, you can build all custom weapon schematics without actually collecting schematics, and this will basically get everything up to rank 3. And this is very useful, because as I mentioned with the Nuka Chemist perk, this kind of removes the dilemma between having to do the Nuka Cola challenge or keeping the Nuka Quantums for yourself. You know, you can basically skip that quest and just wait until level 26 to start crafting nuka grenades, which is quite a long time to be hoarding hundreds of Nuka Colas and Nuka Quantums, but, you know, that's down to you. But on top of that, there are certain schematics that are a pain to obtain. The Deathclaw Gauntlet schematic, for example, I think there's only one set location in the world where you can pick that up, and then the other 2, one's a random encounter and the other one is an unmarked quest in Rivet City. So if you're not using a guide, you know, getting all free schematics for the Deathclaw Gauntlet can be a bit of a nuisance. Not only that, but you don't have to spend money on these schematics either, because there are some schematics that can be obtained just by buying them from a shop. So I'd highly recommend taking this perk, even if you're not really looking to use these customizable weapons. I'd say change your mind and start using them. Being able to craft 3 bottle cap mines at once or 3 nuka grenade at once is very valuable. You know, even just to sell them, it's pretty handy, and also it's a good weapon to have in your back pocket in case things start getting hairy. You know, the Dart Gun, very useful against Yaoguai and Deathclaws. Just cripple their legs, they can't come towards you. And the Deathclaw Gauntlet, even if you're not an unarmed build, it's a good weapon to have in close quarters, just in emergency situations. And it ignores damage resistance and has a high crit rate. So Deathclaw Gauntlet, even for a non-unarmed player, is going to see some good use from it. So A tier for Warmonger. Alright, we're on to level 28 now. Party Boy and Party Girl. No withdrawal effect from alcohol addiction. F tier. I think Party Girl or Party Boy would have been a bit more beneficial if it gave you a buff whilst drinking, but I guess hangover immunity. I mean, the withdrawals from alcohol addiction is -1 to agility and charisma. You'll be fine. And also with the whole My First Laboratory that you can get in your player home, you know, it kind of negates that, so... Waste of a perk, level 28, terrible, bah, F. Alright, the last perk of level 28, and here we are on the doorstep of the level cap. Rad Absorption. Requires 7 endurance, and what this does is decreases your radiation levels by 1 rad every 20 real-world seconds. So if you're waiting in game hour, you lose 6 rads. Whoever programmed this perk is a retard. Seriously, like, rad, like, the radiation, you're gonna decrease the rads that slowly? Like, 1 rad every 20 seconds. Again, at level 28, when you've got hundreds of rad away, you've got the laboratory, the first aid station at your player home, you're telling me that the best you can do at level 28 is 1 rad every 20 seconds? Like, I thought Nerves of Steel and Solar Powered was a joke, but this, like, somebody fucked up here. There must be a decimal point, like, misplaced somewhere, because there is no way someone decided, yeah, what should we get as a perk in the very, very late stages of a character build? Yeah, let's level 28, level 29, yeah, let's go for Rad Absorption. 1 rad every 20 seconds. Requires 7 endurance. Like, this is a level 0 perk disguised as a level 28. Like, how did it get here? Like, this is... what I was talking about earlier about a lot of these perks between level 22 and level 30. They all should have been scattered across the 1 to 20. Like, what's the point of? I guess part of the benefit is I don't know. Like, it's not like yeah, seriously. Like, I'm looking at my notes here and the tier list, and from level 22 to 30, there's only 3 perks worth taking, and the DLC introduced 14 perks, like 3 out of 14. Like I was saying earlier, like a lot of the stuff that you skipped in the early game, this is where you're supposed to pick them up now. You know, you didn't get strong back, go grab it. You didn't get commando or gunslinger, we'll get whichever one you didn't get, because you've got plenty of skill points to bloody use whatever weapon you want by this point. Animal friend, hell, take it. Be fun to watch Yargwide tear apart Deathclaws and Rad Scorpions. I'd rather take here and now and get to level 30 immediately than Rad Absorption. Like, this is this is the drizzling shit. So I'm gonna put it in B tier, no, F tier. Fuck it. Alright, here we are at level 30, the level cap. And there's only 2 perks that you can get exclusively at level 30, because, you know, you could hit level 30 and grab a Rad Absorption. First one we're going to be looking at is Nuclear Anomaly, and what this does is you give off an explosion when your health goes below 20, and it's about the same explosion as a car blowing up or a mini nuke, and this will damage everybody in the vicinity, including allies, so it can be pretty rough. The player is also healed a certain amount of health when the perk activates. Now, to be honest, this perk is not as good as advertised. I mean, for one, you need to hit 20 HP, and that's quite a low number, especially for level 30. If this was like a 20% or even a 10%, it would be a bit more viable, but because it's only 20 hit points, by the time you have this perk, you'll probably be having a few hundreds. It'll take a bit of time to get this perk to trigger. There is the big issue that this perk can actually kill the player if you're playing on a higher difficulty, because of how much damage is being thrown out as well. So you can end up killing yourself. And I think this perk is kind of a missed opportunity, because it would be nice to have like a weird niche build with Nuclear Anomaly and Nerd Rage, where if you go below 20% health, you get a load of damage resistance and you blow up. You kind of have like an explosive rage, but because of how this perk is programmed, it is not very practical, and it feels like a waste of a perk. In fact, it feels broken in some regards. So I'm going to give this F tier, simply because it just fails to live up to its own potential. It's a good idea, but it just wasn't programmed correctly, in my opinion, and it doesn't really synergize up with any other perks. Shit, you know what? I actually forgot. Daddy's Boy, Gun Nut, Little Leaguer, Thief, Scoundrel. I forgot about these perks. And actually, no, I didn't really forget. I intentionally left them out. So these are all perks that will increase your skills by +5. And in some cases, they will give you some dialogue here and there. But for the most part, I put all these perks into F tier. These skill increases are... I mean, it's only +5, you know, it's not really worth a perk point in my opinion. And yeah, I didn't actually forget them. I intentionally left them out, but I feel like I should throw out this comment at the end just to, I don't know, give my quick opinion on them. And if you guys comment that I left them out, that means you haven't watched the full video. And if you have watched the full video and you're listening to this right now, again, leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and check me out on Twitch, or check out the live streams. On Friday, I usually do Fallout Fridays, so hopefully you guys can swing by. And last but not least, certainly not least, because this is one of the perks that's always going to be put on a high pedestal by people, it's Almost Perfect, and it will raise all your special stats to 9. And yeah, I think this is a S tier perk. I mean, it's pretty much the best perk you can get at level 30. You know, whether you've got stuff below 5 or above 5, it doesn't really matter. You know, pumping up everything to 9 is very handy. You know, carry weight from strength and all the skills, and then the crit rate from luck. Very good. And on top of that, if you're one of them people that likes to save the bobblehead collection until after you get Almost Perfect, then you're going to get yourself +10 in all. You have all your special skills up to 10, which is very powerful. I will say though that last time I played Fallout 3, I did manage to get 100 in all skills without Almost Perfect. So this isn't really isn't necessarily an essential perk to get, but you know, there is other benefits other than skill levels. You know, like I said, carry weight from strength, action points from agility, crit rate from luck, stuff like that, and health from endurance. I mean, there's nothing much I can say about this perk. It is an Almost Perfect perk. please leave a like and comment, subscribe. And that's level 30. We're all done for the 30 level. We're all done for the perks that we've that you get from leveling up. All right, that's it for the perks that you get from leveling up, and so far the tier list is pretty crowded at the bottom. A lot of F tiers, a lot of D tiers. C tier is, you know, there's not much there. B tier is pretty crowded, and in terms of S tier and A tiers, well, like I said, there isn't that many great perks in this game. And to be fair, there is like less perks overall than Fallout New Vegas, and you know, kind of because of that, there is less good perks. And granted, like on my Fallout New Vegas tier list, there was a lot in F tier, a lot of D tier, and a lot of C tier. But just by the way this game has its perks, there isn't that many. There's a lot of filler, basically, a lot of filler. And even like skipping like all the skill up perks, there isn't really that much to choose from in terms of S tier and A tier perks. In fact, in the S to B tier, there is 26 perks there, which you can all grab, but then you still have to pick 4 bad perks at some point in the game. But leveling up is not the only way to find perks, and as a little bit of a bonus, this is something I didn't do in the New Vegas tier list perk, I'm actually going to look at the perks you get from completing quests. First quest perk we're looking at is Ant-Mite. What this does is increase your strength by 1 and gives you 25% fire resistance. Now the fire resistance isn't too great. In fact, there's not that many enemies or damage sources of fire in Fallout 3. However, the +1 in strength it's okay, but personally I do not take this perk because I usually build my character in a way where I've already got like 5 or 6 strength. In fact, you need 5 strength minimum to get the strong back perk, so I'm usually building, you know, at a minimum my character always has 5 strength just for that perk, and adding to 6 strength, there isn't really much benefit to having 6 strength over 5. You get 2 extra points in melee and a little bit of carry space, but other than that it's not that useful. The way you get this perk is during quest Vose, and you have to kill the fire ant nest guardians and then talk to Dr. Lesko after the fact, and you basically get a choice between this perk, Ant-Mite, and the other perk, which I'm going to cover now. Ant Sight. Much like Ant-Mite, this increases your special stat, but this one increases perception by 1, and it also gives you the 25% fire resistance. And perception, a lot more useful. It covers 3 skills instead of just the 1, so there's that. And also there's quite a few perks that do require a perception. There isn't that many strength perks, but perception has stuff like better criticals, which is something I usually take. In fact, in a lot of my playthroughs, I will only go 5 perception and 6 luck, and then I'll get the extra perception from this perk so I can get better criticals at level 16. You know, alternatively, you could just use the bobblehead, but if you're saving the bobbleheads for after you get almost perfect, then this is a good way to get a special boost in the early to mid game. Now, granted, these perks are made redundant once you get the almost perfect perk, but in regards to the early game, I mean, most people are going to go to Grey Ditch quite early in their playthrough, so Ant Sight and Ant-Mite are fairly common perks to pick up. Ant-Mite I'm going to put in C tier, and Ant Sight I'm going to put into the A tier. This next perk is from the Pit, Auto Expert. Get it? You collect 10 steel ingots from the steel yard, and this perk is yours. And what it does is it increases your damage with the steel saw, the auto axe, the man opener, and the mauler by 25%. And let me tell you, very good perk for this weapon. I mean, even if you only use this weapon in the DLC and discard it, I mean, the perk is easy to obtain. And with the unique variant of the auto axe, the man opener, you are doing a lot of damage. I mean, you've got 35 damage per second that ignores damage resistance. I mean, you're shredding people up like it's nobody's business. It's amazing. And that includes like enemies with power armor. So to increase that 35 DPS by 25%, I mean, it's a good perk. There's no reason not to get it. There's no reason not to make use of it. Again, even if it's for a temporary purpose, it's a very, very good perk. And I'm going to put it into B tier because, like I said, even if you're not a melee character, this is a perk that you'll probably make good use of and then never use again once you leave the pit, because there's a lot of good weapons in the game that isn't the man opener. Like the guns. Guns are good, right? Right. Next perk is Bark Skin, and you get this by killing Harold in Oasis by destroying his heart. And the Bark Skin effect is increases the wearer's damage resistance by 5%, so it's basically the same as toughness. And because of that, I'm going to throw that into A tier. And now the reason why I'm throwing this into A tier and not S tier next to toughness is because you actually have to do a quest for this. I know that's a stupid reason to not. And, you know, obviously you have to make a specific choice in a quest line to actually do this. You have to destroy Harold's heart. You can't, like, put the ointment on him or do what the druids ask of you. You have to fulfill Harold's wish for assisted dying, you know. So that's kind of the downside. You can't, you know, unlike cyborg and toughness, you can't just pick this by leveling up. You have to make an actual choice that locks you out of other stuff. Alright, the next perk is Booster Shot, and this gives you 10% rad resistance. And you obtain this by completing the quest Free Labor, which is the final quest of the Pit DLC. And I'm going to put this in C tier, and you know, I know this is contradictory to what I've been going on about and all those rants I had about rad resistance perks and anti-radiation perks, but honestly, the reason why I'm putting this in C tier is because it's for free. You don't have to level up and burn a perk point getting this perk. And that's it. There's nothing good about this perk, and there's nothing necessarily bad. It's just a freebie. Kind of same in the same boat as the rad resistance you get with Cyborg. You know, it's just there. You know, it doesn't do much for you, but it's better than nothing, right? Right. Yeah, it's very middle of the road. Nothing really to comment on. Next up is Covert Ops, and you get this in the Operation Anchorage DLC, and if you collect all 10 intel suitcases in the simulation, you gain 3 skill points in Science, Small Guns, and Lockpick. And to be honest, I'm going to put this in D tier because 1, it's a skill up, 2, it's not much of a skill up, and 3, it just feels unrewarding. You know, you go through that entire DLC finding these collectibles, and all you get out of it is, you know, a total of 9 skill points spread across 3 skills. Like, nah, not a fan of it. But yeah, it's a freebie, I guess. But I wouldn't, if you finish the DLC with 9 out of 10 intel suitcases found, then I wouldn't really cry about it because you're not missing much. Alright, next up is the Dream Crusher perk, which you can get during the Wasteland Survival Guide quest. And basically Dream Crusher is to talk Myra into not doing the Wasteland Survival Guide. And the effects of this perk is it reduces the enemy's chance to critically hit the player by 50%. You also get a 30% discount at Create Side Supply, and you also increase Myra Brown's repair skill by 18 points. And basically, I'm going to put this in D tier, and the reason for this is, 1, the Survival Guru perk that you can get is a lot more valuable. In fact, it's more valuable to actually do this quest than to skip it. As for the repair for Myra, there's traveling merchants that have 100 repair skill and a 30% discount in one shop. Really isn't that worth it, in my opinion. Receiving critical hits less often. I don't know, I don't really notice enemies critting me all that often to begin with, so the crit resistance is also pretty meager. But the fact that you have to give up a lot of good stuff for this perk makes it a D tier perk, in my opinion. Next perk we're looking at is Ghoul Ecology, and you obtain this by reading Pilk's journal in the Point Lookout DLC. And what this does is it adds +5 damage against ghouls, or at least that's what it's supposed to do. You see that for whatever reason there's a bug, and this damage is applied against every enemy, and it's not a 5% increase. This is a +5 like damage, like in the same effect as Iron Fist effect. Unarmed attacks, this affects damage all together. So you have like a machine gun or an assault rifle that does 5 damage per bullet. It's now doing 10 damage per bullet. And when you use stuff like a Chinese assault rifle in VATS and you burst firing, that really does stack up. It is pretty ridiculous. So +5 damage per bullet on all targets. I mean, it's bugged, but hey, we're looking at this from the eyes of a unmodded, no unofficial patch playthrough, and because it's bugged in the player's advantage and it's a really powerful bug, we're going to put this in S tier. So it's worth going into the Point Lookout DLC just to get this perk. And it'll obviously, because Point Lookout is somewhat of an end game DLC, a lot of the enemies that you'll come across are going to be high level and have a lot of health, so every bit of damage you can get is highly valuable. Next perk we're looking at is Hematophage. You get this when you ally Arafu and the family, and then afterwards get Vance's training. This is part of the Blood Ties quest line, and what it does is allows you to consume blood packs for 20 hit points. And I'm going to put this in D tier because basically it's more valuable to collect the blood packs to turn in to Vance, and even then I don't really do that often because there's a lot of loading screens between the open world and where the family live. But looking at the perk itself, we basically got a healing item that doesn't really heal all that much compared to stim packs, and it actually has a weight value to it. So you basically got weighted health packs that aren't even that strong. So overall it is a pretty bad perk, and I don't know, if for some reason the hit points that it heals scaled off of medicine, that would be pretty cool, but it doesn't, so it's a very weak perk, so it gets a D from me. Next perk is called Pit Fighter, and you get it from Mothership the Pit. You get this perk from completing all the hull battles, which is a part of the quest Unsafe Working Conditions. Perk's effect is a 3% increase in your damage resistance and radiation resistance, and this is going firmly into the A tier because it is damage resistance. And hey, you get toughness, you got cyborg, you got bark skin, you got pit fighter. You know, that's a good amount of damage resistance. Not to mention whatever resistance you'll get whenever you go into VATs. So you can make yourself pretty sturdy if you start stacking up all these perks. I was initially going to skip this perk, but what the hell. This is power armor training. There's a couple of ways you can get this power armor training. You can follow the main quest and get it given to you by Elder Lions. You can either request it from him during pick up the trail, and he authorize training to you, or you can get it after the quest The American Dream. But if you want to get the power armor training as soon as possible, you can leave Vault 101 and head straight for Operation Anchorage and get power armor training right after that. And me personally, I do not do power armor training that often. In fact, if I'm playing Fallout 3, I'm usually going around wearing the Ranger armor with boosting luck and all that malarkey and action points. But I guess for a level 30 character with max stats, I think power armor training is a very useful function, and you can be very beefy and very tanky with certain power armors. But I don't know where to rate this, so I'm going to put it into C tier because it's not particularly important in my opinion. And funnily enough, your followers don't have to have power armor training to wear power armor, so if you find any power armor out in the wasteland, you can just, put it on Sharon and let them sponge everything, which is great. Outside of that, yeah, can't really comment on power armor training. Like I said, I was going to skip it, but here we are, we're talking about it. Next up is Punga Power. It boosts the rad recovery of Punga fruits, from -1 to -5 on the normal ones, and -2 to -15 on the refined pungas. And yeah, I don't know, this is a weird one. So you get this by finishing the quest Walking with Spirits, so it's part of the Point Lookout main quest line. So I can't really fault it for being a freebie perk. That's why I put it in C tier. Obviously, a Radaway is a lot better, and by the time you do Point Lookout, probably have a lot of Radaways. However, being able to heal 15 HP with a refined refined Punga and recover 15 rads. I mean, it's nice and convenient, but like I said, it's not a great perk, but it's not a terrible perk. It's literally a freebie, so that's honestly the only reason why I would rank it at C. If it was something you'd had to go out of your way for or had to make a decision to obtain, it would definitely be lower in the tier list. But because it's a freebie, I'm going to give it a bit of mercy because, I don't know, Refined Punga, it's not the strongest healing item in the game. It's not the strongest radiation healing item in the game, and it has a unit weight of 1. So, it's pretty rough. It might help you in a situation where you might have entered Point Lookout with low supplies. And hell, if you entered Point Lookout in the early game, this might help you, but not feeling it. All right, next up is Rad Regeneration. And you obtain this in the early parts of Wasteland Survival Guide. When Moira is asking you to get irradiated for her studies, you got to get yourself highly irradiated, do the bonus task, and then come back to it. And then you'll have the small, teeny tiny mutation, and this mutation is that perk, and that perk is crippled limbs will regenerate under the effects of advanced radiation poisoning. And let me tell you, advanced radiation poisoning, not good at all. In fact, with advanced radiation poisoning, you are down -2 endurance and -1 agility. And -2 endurance, it's quite a bit of max health lost. Now, having your limbs regenerate isn't too much of a problem, owing to the fact that you can just target your limbs with a stim pack, and there's plenty of stim packs in the wasteland, so you're not going to be short on it. And also with perks like Adamantium Skeleton, you're not going to be crippled all that often. And on top of that, you can also use your infirmary, you can visit a doctor. It's not that bad. Like it's a pretty underwhelming perk, to be honest. And it might be a freebie and easier to obtain, but I'm still going to put it in F tier. Now, if this perk was, say, in Fallout New Vegas, or if we had like the Radchild perk from New Vegas, which, gave you health regen based on having a high amount, based on your radiation level, there could be an argument made here, like, but there's no real benefit of being irradiated in Fallout 3. There's no like niche build like you would get in New Vegas or Fallout 4 or Fallout 76. Radiation is kind of just a minor inconvenience at best. So a perk that would ask you to, hey, have less health so your limbs regenerate, it's a bit much for a bit little. So no, F tier. This next perk is from the Point Lookout DLC, and it's called Superior Defender. You obtain this by completing the local flavor, and its effect is very powerful. You gain a +5 damage on your attacks, and that works the exact same way as Ghoul Ecology. Also, your armor is increased by +10. Now granted, these bonuses are only applied when the player is standing still. However, if you're using a VATS build, you're always standing still while it's attacking. Now, if you're playing a character that's using something like a Gatling laser or a minigun or any automatic weapon and you're just standing still, bullet hosing, you combine Superior Defender with Ghoul Ecology, you got 10 bonus damage on each bullet. And apparently, I'm looking at the bug section on the fandom wiki, and this might affect be on a per pellet basis for shotguns as well. So you can pump out a lot of damage so long as you're not moving. And for that, I'm going to put it in S tier, because by the time you get this perk, you're going to be pretty tanky and you're going to be dealing a lot of damage. Super Mutant Behemoth, Super Mutant Overlords, Albino Rad Scorpions, they're not going to bother you too much. They're just going to run in towards you and just get melted. Next perk is Wide Reflexes. And to obtain this perk, you basically have to side with Dr. Zimmer in the Replicated Man quest. And the effect of this is +10% hit chances in VATS. And, well, I'm going to put it in A tier because, as I've said before with VATS builds, they're very powerful. And I know it's only 10%, and I have put other perks in the B tier that affect VATS accuracy. But the thing that I want to give Wide Reflexes an edge over is the fact that this affects every weapon, not just, pistols or rifles. And it's kind of the same vein as Sniper, where it's like, okay, that affects 10%. That affects heads only, but it lets you aim at the head a lot easier with all weapons. It's kind of the same idea, Wide Reflexes. And if you can get this perk pretty early in the game, you can get your VATS builds going pretty reliably really early. Now, typically you're supposed to pick between this perk and a unique plasma weapon, but I think this perk is a lot more valuable than a plasma rifle, to be honest with you. But there is ways to obtain both this perk and the weapon. But given a choice, I'd usually take the perk over the weapon. Next perk is called Xenotech Expert, and what it does is it increases the damage done with alien weapons by 20%. And you obtain this during the Mothership Zeta DLC, and what you have to do is you have to kill 10 enemies with an alien weapon at the shooting range part of the ship. And I'm going to put this in S tier because even though the ammo and weapons are in a finite resource, the alien blaster and violence ammo more so than, say, the pulverizer, the disintegrator, and all that malarkey. These weapons hit hard, they do a lot of damage, and they have a decent crit rate, especially the Alien Blaster. The Alien Blaster and the Fire Lance both have a 100% hit chance. So increasing that damage by 20% is no joke. It will basically carry you for a lot of the game if you manage to do the DLC pretty early. Though granted, the DLC can be quite difficult and a bit weird, but easily this perk might be the best thing about that DLC. So I would highly recommend jumping in the DLC. If you're an energy weapons character, Mothership Zeta is pretty much something you want to go for immediately. Right, this perk is going to be a difficult one to talk about, but I'm going to try my best, so bear with me. There are 3 levels to this perk. there's Junior Survivor, Survival Expert, and Survival Guru. Now, this is all part of the Wasteland Survival Guide quest line, but with Junior Survivor, you need to complete fewer than 5 optional objectives. Survival Expert is complete 5 to 8 optional objectives, and Survival Guru is to complete all optional objectives. And for the sake of making this a bit more streamlined, we're going to be looking at the Survival Guru perks instead. So we're going to look at this assuming that you've actually pulled your finger out and actually did the work and did all the side quests and optional stuff. Now, there's many variants to the Survival Guru perk, and what variant you get will depend on what ranking this will go in. And after turning in the quests or turning in the objectives, you'll speak to Moira, and you can have different responses to her questions. Now, a fairly normal response, which is typically the top answer. There's also the smart responses, which is for intelligence and perception. You have the tough answers for strength and endurance. You have the sly answers for agility and charisma. And you have the snide responses, which is, usually the bottom choice. You can mix and match and vary all these up to have a kind of a mixture between all of your perks. But I'm going to address this in a way that you've picked the same response or type of response in every conversation, every turn-in. So the perk itself will give you 6 poison and 6 radiation resistance, which radiation resistance isn't much of a problem, and poison resistance, there's only one source of poison, so the perk by itself isn't that impressive. For the normal responses, you will get an increase of 15 health, and for that variant, the normal responses, the health boost, I'm going to put that in C tier. The smart responses, which is for the intelligence or perception checks, you'll gain a +6 in medicine and a +6 in science. And I'm going to put that in F tier because a skill increase isn't that valuable as a perk in Fallout 3. The tough responses for strength and endurance will give you a 6% damage resistance increase. And I'm going to put that in A tier. Being more sturdy is very, very valuable. The sly response, which is agility and charisma, will increase your speech and your sneak skills by 6. I'm going to put that in F tier for the same reason as I put the smart one. Now, the snide responses, that's usually at the bottom of the list, you will get 3% increase in your crit chance. And I'm going to put that in S tier because being able to land critical hits more often is very valuable, especially if you look at a level 30 character that will probably have 10 luck, finesse, better criticals, any way to increase that critical hit chance, even if it's something minor like 3%, is going to benefit quite a lot. And on my Tale 2 Wastelands playthrough, I went with the snide responses. I got the crit chance, so for displaying to put on display on the tier list, I'm going to put that in S tier. But like I said, this all counts on how many all your responses. You can mix and match, but it is a weird perk. It's got a lot of variety to it. Alright, thank you all for taking the time to watch this video. I'm going to say, pretty surprised about how many decent perks there are in Fallout 3, especially the perks that you can find just by doing quests. It's kind of weird that the DLC perks that you get just from completing certain quests or doing certain actions are a lot better than the perks that you get between level 22 and level 30. I guess, I don't know, Bethesda learned their lesson from making bad perks in Broken Steel, maybe? I don't know. Either way, I hope you guys found this interesting. If you have any opinions on some of the rankings, any things you disagree with, feel free to leave a comment and leave a like, leave a dislike, whatever it deserves, and subscribe. And feel free to check me out on Twitch and YouTube. I live stream every Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. And Fridays are usually reserved for Fallout Fridays. So if you want to talk about Fallout more, or you catch me on the live streams and we can argue about how great Fallout 3's perks are, I don't know. But yeah, hope you all have a good day, good night, good forever. I will see you later. Bye.